The soap burned her knuckles raw, but Nora Owens kept scrubbing because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering that 3 months ago she had a home, a father, and a future that didn't involve her knees pressed against saloon floorboards. The Silver Dollar Saloon in Calistoga, California, wasn't the worst place she could have ended up in 1878, but it wasn't far from it either. Every night brought the same sounds: drunken laughter, piano music slightly off-key, the clink of whiskey bottles, and occasionally gunshots that sent her heart racing until she learned to distinguish celebration from violence. She pushed a strand of dark hair from her face with her forearm, leaving a streak of soapy water across her temple, and moved to the next section of floor that needed attention. "You missed a spot near the bar," Mabel called from behind the counter, her voice neither cruel nor kind, just matter of fact. Mabel had given Nora this job when she arrived in town with nothing but the dress on her back and desperation in her eyes. For that, Nora was grateful, even when her back ached and her hands cracked and bled from the lye soap. Nora nodded and redirected her brush to the indicated area. The morning light filtered through the dusty windows, illuminating particles that danced in the air like tiny spirits. In a few hours, those same windows would need cleaning, but for now she focused on removing the evidence of last night's revelry. Something sticky that might have been spilled beer mixed with mud from countless boots created a stubborn patch that required her full attention. The door swung open, bell chiming, and Nora didn't look up. Early morning visitors were usually men still drunk from the night before, or those looking to start drinking before most people had breakfast. She heard boots, good quality ones from the sound, cross the floor she had just cleaned. The footsteps stopped near her. "We are not open yet," Mabel announced from her position. "Come back in 2 hours." "I am not here for whiskey," a man's voice responded, deep and measured. "I am looking to hire someone. Heard you might know people needing work." Nora continued scrubbing, though curiosity made her want to glance up. She kept her eyes down, a habit formed from learning that making eye contact with men in this place often led to assumptions she would rather avoid. "What kind of work?" Mabel asked, and Nora heard the protective edge in her tone. Despite running a saloon, Mabel had standards about certain things: household work, cooking, mending, general keeping of a home. "My sister lived with me and managed such things, but she married last month and moved to her husband's ranch near Sacramento. The place has gone to chaos without her." The man sounded almost embarrassed by this admission. "Might have someone," Mabel said slowly. "What does it pay?" Nora's heart quickened. She continued scrubbing but strained to hear every word. "Room, board, and $30 a month. The work would be hard but honest. I run cattle, so I am often gone during the day. Would need someone trustworthy. $30. Nora earned 12 working at the saloon, and that was only because Mabel was generous. Room and board on top of that. It sounded too good, which usually meant it was. "Nora," Mabel called. "Come here." She sat back on her heels, then stood, wiping her reddened hands on her apron before approaching. As she neared, she finally looked at the man who had made the offer. He was tall, probably in his late 20s, with sun-weathered skin that spoke of long hours outdoors. His dark hair needed cutting, and several days of beard growth shadowed his jaw, but his blue eyes were clear and direct. He wore working clothes, clean but worn, and a hat he had removed upon entering, which impressed her more than she wanted to admit. Those eyes moved to her face, then dropped to her hands, which she suddenly wanted to hide behind her back. The skin was red and raw, knuckles cracked and bleeding in places, fingernails broken short from constant work. His expression shifted, something like regret crossing his features. "Those hands deserve softer work," he said quietly, and she heard genuine concern in his voice rather than pity, which somehow made it worse and better simultaneously. "My hands are fine," Nora said, lifting her chin. "They work, and that is what matters." "Did not say they did not work," he replied. "Said they deserve softer work. I am Benjamin Parker. I have a ranch about 5 miles outside town, nothing fancy but solid. I need help managing the house. Mabel can vouch I am not." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I am not looking for anything improper. Just need someone to cook food that does not taste like boot leather and keep my clothes from falling apart." "You cook that bad?" The question escaped before Nora could stop it. A slight smile touched his mouth. "Worse than bad. I burned water last week." Despite herself, Nora felt her lips twitch. "That is not possible." "You would think so, but I managed it. Left a pot on the fire and forgot about it. Water boiled away and the pot cracked from the heat. So yes, I burned water, or at least the vessel containing it." Mabel laughed outright. "That is truly terrible, Ben." So Mabel knew him. That eased something in Nora's chest. She looked at the older woman, asking with her eyes. "Ben Parker is honest," Mabel said, understanding the unspoken question. "Known him 5 years. He brings cattle through here on the way to market. Never caused trouble, always pays his bills, treats women respectfully. If he says the work is honest, it is." Benjamin looked between them. "I will give you time to think on it. I have business in town today, will be leaving around sunset. If you want the position, meet me at the livery stable before then." He placed his hat back on his head, nodded to both women and walked out, his boots tracking across the clean floor. Nora stared at the door after it closed. "That is a good offer," Mabel said. "Better than you will find anywhere else around here." Why would he offer so much? Because good help is hard to find, and Ben Parker understands value. He is not rich, but he is not poor either. Works hard, built that ranch himself over the past 8 years. Started with nothing but determination and a piece of land he won in a card game. Mabel moved from behind the bar, approaching Nora. "You are afraid." It was not a question. Nora nodded slowly. "I do not know him." "You do not know anyone here except me, and you trusted me enough to take work scrubbing floors." Mabel reached out, gently taking one of Nora's damaged hands. "Child, these hands tell a story of someone willing to work herself to bone to survive. That is admirable. But if someone offers you a chance at something better, you would be a fool not to consider it seriously. Ben Parker is a good man. They are rare, but they exist." Nora thought about her small room above the saloon, barely large enough for the narrow bed and small trunk that held her few possessions. She thought about the sound of fights at night, the smell of smoke and alcohol that permeated everything. She thought about her hands and how much they hurt every day. "I will think about it," she said finally. Mabel nodded and released her hand. "Think carefully, but think quickly. Opportunities do not wait around in this life." The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Nora finished the floors, then cleaned the windows, then helped prepare the saloon for opening. Her mind kept circling back to Benjamin Parker's offer. Room, board, and $30. Honest work. A ranch outside of town, away from the noise and smoke. Those hands deserve softer work. She looked down at them again, at the red, raw skin and cracked knuckles. They were 22 years old, same as the rest of her, but they looked older. Her mother's hands had looked like this, worked rough from years of laundry and scrubbing. Nora remembered kissing those hands when she was small, and her mother laughing, saying they were too ugly for kisses. Her mother had died when Nora was 15. Her father had followed 3 months ago, a fever taking him in less than a week. He had been a clerk at a mining company in Nevada, and when he died, the company claimed he owed them money. They took everything, the small house, the furniture, her mother's dishes. Nora had left with nothing, traveling west because someone said California had opportunities. They had not mentioned the opportunities mostly involved saloons or worse. By afternoon, Nora had made her decision. She found Mabel during a quiet moment. "I am going to take his offer," she said. Mabel nodded, looking unsurprised. "I thought you might. You will need your pay. But the month is not finished. Consider it a parting gift." Mabel went to the cash box and counted out bills. $15. "That is what you have earned so far, plus a little extra. Take it. You will need supplies." Tears burned Nora's eyes. "Thank you for everything. You gave me work when I had nothing. You earned your keep, girl. You are a hard worker and you never complained. Those qualities will serve you well wherever you go." Mabel pressed the money into Nora's hand. "Now go pack your things. And Nora, if things do not work out, if anything seems wrong, you come straight back here. You understand? I will always have a place for you." Nora nodded, not trusting her voice, and hurried upstairs to her tiny room. She owned so little that packing took mere minutes. 2 dresses, one for working and one for church that she rarely attended. Undergarments. A brush that had been her mother's. A small Bible. A photograph of her parents on their wedding day, the edges worn from handling. She wrapped everything in a shawl and tied it into a bundle. This was her entire life, small enough to carry in 2 hands. The afternoon dragged by. Nora helped with the usual tasks, but her mind was elsewhere. What if she was making a mistake? What if Mabel was wrong about Benjamin Parker? What if he expected more than cooking and cleaning? But what if he did not? What if this was exactly what he said? An honest job with honest pay. Could she afford to turn that down because of fear? By the time sunset approached, her stomach was twisted in knots. She changed into her better dress, brushed her hair and pinned it up, and picked up her bundle. Mabel was serving customers when Nora came downstairs, but she looked up and gave an encouraging nod. The walk to the livery stable took less than 10 minutes. Calistoga was not a large town, though it had grown since the hot springs brought tourists seeking the healing waters. The main street held a general store, a bank, the saloon, a hotel, a church, and various other businesses. Nora had walked these streets dozens of times, but always with the knowledge she would return to the saloon. Now, she might be leaving for good. The livery stable smelled of hay and horses. She stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dimmer light. Benjamin Parker stood near a large bay horse, checking the saddle straps. A wagon waited nearby, already loaded with supplies. He looked up when she entered, and something like relief crossed his face. "You came." "I came," she confirmed, gripping her bundle tighter. "The offer still stands." "It does." He finished with the saddle and walked over. "I am glad. I was not sure you would." "I almost did not," she admitted. "But Mabel spoke well of you, and I would like a chance at something different." He nodded slowly. "I will do my best to make sure you do not regret this decision." "Do you have belongings?" She lifted her small bundle and he glanced at it, his expression carefully neutral. She felt embarrassed by how little she had, but he simply said, "Put it in the wagon. We should leave soon if we want to reach the ranch before full dark." Nora placed her bundle in the wagon bed, next to crates and sacks of supplies. Benjamin untied the bay horse and led it outside, then helped her up onto the wagon seat before climbing up beside her. He took the reins, and with a click of his tongue, they started moving. They left Calistoga behind as the sun sank lower, painting the California sky in shades of orange and pink. The road was well-traveled, winding through rolling hills dotted with oak trees. The air smelled cleaner out here, away from town, carrying scents of dry grass and earth. "The ranch is called the Double P," Benjamin said after a stretch of silence. Named it after my father, Peter Parker. He died before I could bring him out here, but I named it for him anyway. I am sorry, Nora said. About your father. It was 7 years ago. Fever took him, same as it takes so many. He glanced at her. Mabel mentioned you lost your father recently. 3 months ago, also fever. She paused. It seems to be a common thief of parents. The cruelest kind. They fell silent again, but it felt less awkward now, more like shared understanding. The landscape changed as they traveled, becoming more wild. Cattle grazed in the distance, dark shapes against the darkening land. The wagon creaked and rattled over the uneven road, and Nora gripped the seat to steady herself when they hit rougher patches. "Tell me about your sister," she said, wanting to know more about the woman whose role she would be filling. "The one who married." Benjamin's expression softened. "Sarah. She is 2 years younger than me, stubborn as a mule and twice as opinionated. She kept house for me since I started the ranch, but she met a man named Thomas who owns land near Sacramento. Good man, treats her well. I was happy for her, even though I knew I would miss her. She taught me everything I know about ranching, which is probably why I am barely competent at it. You seem to be doing well enough if you can afford to hire help. I have been lucky. The land is good, the cattle thrive, and I made some smart choices about where to sell. But I am the first to admit I work better with animals than people. My sister was the one who could charm buyers and negotiate prices. I mostly just try not to say something stupid." Nora found herself smiling. There was an honesty to him that she appreciated. No false bravado or exaggerated stories of success, just a man admitting his limitations. "What about you?" he asked. "What brought you to California?" She told him, keeping her voice steady through the story of her father's death, the company taking everything, her journey west with hope and little else. She did not mention how frightened she had been, or the men on the train who had looked at her in ways that made her skin crawl, or the nights she went hungry because she could not afford food. But perhaps he heard those things anyway in the spaces between her words. "You have had a hard time of it," he said quietly when she finished. "That is going to change now. I promise the work at the ranch will be honest and the pay regular. You will have your own room in the house and I will not disturb you. My room is upstairs, yours will be downstairs. There is a lock on your door if that makes you feel safer." The fact that he mentioned it, that he understood she might need that reassurance, eased something in her chest. "Thank you." They crested a hill and Benjamin pointed ahead. "There it is, the double P." The ranch spread out in the valley below, and even in the fading light, Nora could see it was more substantial than she had expected. A 2-story house sat at the center, built of wood that looked solid and well-maintained. A barn stood nearby, larger than the house, with a corral attached. Other smaller buildings dotted the property. What might be a bunkhouse, a chicken coop, storage sheds. Fences marked pastures where cattle grazed. "It is bigger than I thought," Nora said. "I have 6 men who work the cattle," Benjamin explained as they descended toward the ranch. "They sleep in the bunkhouse and mostly take care of themselves, but Sarah used to cook for everyone. I have been trying to manage it, but—" He shook his head. "The men have been very polite about how terrible the food is." "I am a decent cook," Nora said. "My mother taught me. I have not had much chance to do it at the saloon, but I remember. Anything will be an improvement over what I have been serving." They reached the house, and Benjamin pulled the wagon to a stop near the front porch. He jumped down, then came around to help her, his hands firm on her waist as he lifted her down. The touch was brief and impersonal, but Nora still felt her cheeks warm. The house had a solid front door and windows that reflected the last light of day. Benjamin opened the door and gestured for her to enter. "Welcome to your new home." Nora stepped inside and looked around. The main room served as a kitchen and living area combined. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, with comfortable-looking chairs arranged nearby. The kitchen area held a cast iron stove, a sturdy table with chairs, shelves of dishes and supplies. Everything was slightly disorganized, as if someone had been searching for things and not putting them back properly, but the bones of it were good. "Your room is through there," Benjamin said, pointing to a door off the kitchen. "It is not large, but it has a good bed and a window. The washroom is behind the kitchen, fed by a spring so the water is cold but clean. There is an outhouse about 50 feet from the back door." Nora walked to the door he had indicated and opened it. The room beyond was simple but clean. A bed with a real mattress, a dresser, a small table with a lamp, a window with actual curtains. After her tiny room above the saloon, it looked like luxury. "It is perfect," she said, turning back to him. "Truly?" He looked relieved. "Good. I am glad you think so. I will bring in the supplies from the wagon and your belongings. Are you hungry? I have some bread and cheese, probably some dried meat." "I can prepare something," Nora offered, "if you show me where things are." So began her first evening at the Double P Ranch. While Benjamin unloaded the wagon, Nora explored the kitchen, finding supplies and getting a sense of what was available. She located flour, lard, dried beans, coffee, sugar, salt. The root cellar held potatoes, onions, and carrots. It was enough to work with. By the time Benjamin finished with the wagon, she had coffee brewing and was frying potatoes with onions. The simple meal smelled wonderful after a long day of travel. She set the table, and they sat down to eat together as full darkness settled outside. "This is delicious," Benjamin said after his first bite, and she could tell he meant it. "I cannot remember the last time food tasted this good. It is just fried potatoes. You have not tasted my fried potatoes. They somehow end up both burned and raw at the same time." She laughed, surprising herself. When had she last laughed? "I am not sure that is possible." "I assure you it is. I have a gift for ruining food in ways that should not be possible." They ate in comfortable silence after that, both tired from the day. When they finished, Nora insisted on cleaning up while Benjamin tended to the horses. She washed dishes in the basin, her hands starting to ache less in the cool water. Through the window, she could see the barn, lamplight spilling from its open door. What was she doing here? She barely knew this man. She was living in his house, miles from town, with no way to leave if things went wrong. Fear crept up her spine, cold and insistent. But then she remembered Mabel's words. "Ben Parker is a good man. They are rare, but they exist." She had to trust something. She had to believe that goodness existed, or what was the point of any of this? Benjamin returned as she finished with the dishes. "I will show you the morning routine," he said. "But for tonight you should rest. It has been a long day." "Thank you." Nora dried her hands on a towel, wincing at the sting. "What time should I wake?" "Whenever you wake naturally. We can sort out schedules tomorrow." He moved toward the stairs. "Sleep well, Nora Owens. I am glad you are here." He disappeared upstairs before she could respond. Nora stood in the quiet kitchen, listening to the sounds of him moving around overhead, then the creak of a bed as he settled in for the night. She went to her room and closed the door. The lock clicked easily, though she felt a little guilty using it. She changed into her nightdress, brushed her hair, and slipped into bed. The mattress was comfortable, the blankets warm. Through the window, she could see stars scattered across the night sky like diamonds on black velvet. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, for the first time in months, Nora felt safe. That was enough. Sleep came easily, deep and dreamless, and she did not wake until morning light streamed through her window. The smell of burning woke her. Nora sat up, disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. The smell grew stronger and she heard cursing from the kitchen. She dressed quickly and emerged to find Benjamin standing over the stove, waving a towel at smoke rising from a pan. "What are you doing?" she asked. He turned, looking sheepish. "Trying to make breakfast. I wanted to have something ready when you woke, but—" He gestured at the pan, which held what might have once been eggs but now resembled charcoal. Nora moved quickly to the stove, removing the pan from the heat. The eggs were ruined. The pan would need serious scrubbing. She turned to Benjamin, who looked like a boy caught stealing candy. "You have got to let me handle the cooking," she said, trying not to laugh. "This is truly impressive in its awfulness. I told you I was terrible. You understated it." She found fresh eggs and started again, this time doing it properly. Benjamin sat at the table watching her work. "Sarah used to say I could burn water, same as you did," he said. "I thought she was exaggerating. She was not." Nora cracked eggs into a clean pan, added a bit of butter, and watched them cook properly. "How did you survive before she lived with you?" "Poorly. I ate a lot of dried meat and bread. Sometimes the ranch hands took pity on me and shared their food." She shook her head but smiled. Within minutes, she had proper scrambled eggs ready, along with toasted bread and fresh coffee. They sat together and ate, morning light filling the kitchen with golden warmth. "Tell me about the routine," Nora said. "What needs doing?" Benjamin explained his schedule. He woke early, tended to the horses, checked on the cattle with his men. He usually returned mid-morning, then went out again in the afternoon. The ranch hands managed most of the cattle work, but he needed to oversee operations. They expected 3 meals a day: breakfast early, lunch at noon, supper in the evening. "The men are good workers," he said. "Fair and respectful. They will not bother you, but they will appreciate good food after what they have been enduring." "I will do my best," Nora promised. The morning passed quickly. Benjamin showed her around the property, introducing her to the ranch hands, grizzled older men and younger cowboys, all polite and clearly delighted to learn she would be cooking. She toured the barn, met the chickens, learned where supplies were kept. The ranch was well organized despite Benjamin's claims of chaos. By noon, she had prepared a lunch of beef stew using leftover meat, potatoes, carrots, and onions simmered until tender. The men ate with enthusiasm that was gratifying, complimenting the food between bites. Benjamin looked on with clear relief. "You have saved us all," one of the older hands said, a man named Dutch who served as foreman. "We were starting to consider mutiny." "It was not that bad," Benjamin protested. "Boss, last week you served us something you called stew that was mostly just hot water with sad vegetables floating in it. This," Dutch gestured at his bowl, "is actually stew." The men laughed, and even Benjamin grinned. Nora felt warmth spread through her chest. This was good. This felt right. The days developed a rhythm. Nora woke early, prepared breakfast, cleaned the house, did laundry, mended clothes, prepared lunch and supper. The work was hard but different from scrubbing saloon floors. Here she worked for herself as much as for Benjamin. The house became cleaner, more organized. She planted herbs near the kitchen door. She darned socks and repaired torn shirts. She baked bread that filled the house with warmth and comfort. Benjamin treated her with unfailing courtesy. He thanked her for meals, complimented her work, but kept a respectful distance. Sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression she could not quite read, but he always looked away when noticed. Her hands began to heal. The constant scrubbing was replaced with gentler work. The cracks closed, the redness faded. They still worked hard, but Benjamin had been right. They deserved softer work, and now they had it. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Nora fell into the life of the ranch easily, finding satisfaction in work that felt meaningful. The men appreciated her efforts and the house thrived under her care. She had not realized how much she missed having a home until she had one again. One evening, after the hands had returned to the bunkhouse and the dishes were cleaned, Benjamin asked if she would sit with him on the porch. The request surprised her, but she agreed. They sat in rocking chairs, watching the sun set over the hills, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. "You have done wonderful work here," Benjamin said after a comfortable silence. "The house has not felt this much like a home since Sarah left. The men are happier. I am happier." "I am glad," Nora said honestly. "I like it here. I like the work, the quiet. After the saloon, it feels peaceful. Do you miss town at all?" She considered this. "I miss Mabel. She was kind to me when she did not have to be, but the town itself. No, this is better." "You should visit her," Benjamin said. "Take the wagon whenever you want. I trust you to come back." The words settled over her warmly. Trust. When had anyone trusted her? "Thank you." They rocked in silence, listening to the evening sounds, cattle lowing in the distance, crickets beginning their nightly song, the soft whinny of horses in the barn. "Can I ask you something?" Nora said. "Of course." "Why did you really hire me?" "That day in the saloon, you could have asked Mabel to recommend someone without meeting them. But you came yourself, and you looked at my hands and you said they deserved softer work." "Why?" Benjamin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "My mother had hands like yours. Worked raw from labor, red and cracked. She was a laundress, took in washing to support us after my father got sick. Every night I watched her tend to her hands, wrapping them in cloth so she could sleep. She never complained, but I knew they hurt." He paused. "When I saw your hands, I saw hers. And I thought, if I could help, I should, that is all." Nora felt tears prick her eyes. "That is a good reason. My mother died when I was 19. She worked herself to death, literally. One day she just collapsed and she never got back up. The doctor said her heart gave out, but I knew it was more than that. She had nothing left to give." He turned to look at Nora. "When I saw you scrubbing that floor, working so hard, I did not want that to be your future. You deserve better than working yourself to death in a saloon." "You are a good man, Benjamin Parker," Nora said quietly. "I try to be. It is what my mother would have wanted." Something shifted between them in that moment, subtle but significant. They were no longer just employer and employee. They were two people who had both lost parents, both known struggle, both understood the weight of survival. The days continued. Spring turned toward summer, bringing longer days and warmer weather. Nora's hands healed completely, becoming soft again for the first time in months. She caught herself sometimes just looking at them, marveling at the change. Benjamin had given her that gift, whether he realized it or not. She also began to notice other things about him. The way he was gentle with the horses. How he listened when the ranch hands brought problems, never dismissing their concerns. The care he took with injured cattle. His terrible jokes that made her laugh despite herself. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, which he did more often now. Oh no. The realization crept up slowly, then hit all at once. She was developing feelings for Benjamin Parker, more than gratitude, more than friendship. She looked forward to his presence. She found herself listening for his footsteps, watching for him to come in from the range. She noticed the breadth of his shoulders, the strength in his hands, the kindness in his eyes. This was dangerous. He was her employer. She needed this job. What if he did not feel the same? What if she ruined everything by letting her feelings show? She tried to push the feelings down, but they only grew stronger. Every meal together, every evening conversation, every accidental brush of hands when passing dishes fed the attraction, until it became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, about 2 months after she arrived, a storm rolled in suddenly. Nora was hanging laundry when the wind picked up, sending sheets whipping wildly. She rushed to pull everything down before the rain started, but she was only halfway done when the sky opened up. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking her instantly. She grabbed the basket of half-dried laundry and ran for the house, but the ground had turned muddy. Her foot slipped, the basket flew from her hands and she fell hard, landing on her side in the mud. Nora. She looked up to see Benjamin running from the barn. He reached her in seconds, helping her to her feet. Rain plastered his hair to his head, ran down his face. He was soaked as thoroughly as she was. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands on her arms, checking for injury. "Just my pride," she managed, aware of how close he was, how his hands felt on her arms. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression changed. They stood there in the pouring rain, mud-covered and dripping, and the air between them felt electric. "Nora," he said, his voice rough, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I think I am falling in love with you." Her heart stopped. "What?" "I know I should not. I am your employer. You depend on this job. It is inappropriate for me to say this, but I cannot help it. These past 2 months, watching you bring life back to this house to me, I have fallen. I am sorry if that makes you uncomfortable. I promise it will not change anything. I will still respect your position here. I needed you to know." Nora stared at him, rain running down her face, heart pounding. "You love me." "I am falling in love with you," he corrected. "I probably already have fallen if I am honest." Joy burst through her like sunlight. "Good," he blinked. "Good? Yes, good, because I am falling in love with you too." His face transformed, breaking into the most genuine smile she had ever seen. "Truly, truly." He pulled her closer and she went willingly, wrapping her arms around his neck. He kissed her there in the rain, gentle at first, then deeper, more passionate. She kissed him back with everything she had, all the feelings she had been suppressing pouring out. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Benjamin laughed. "We are standing in a storm, covered in mud." "I do not care," Nora said and kissed him again. Eventually they made it inside, dripping and muddy. They stood in the kitchen, grinning at each other like fools. "I should change," Nora said, suddenly aware of how improper this was. "So should I." But Benjamin did not move, just kept looking at her like she was something precious. "Nora Owens, would you let me court you properly? I know the circumstances are unusual with you working here, but I want to do this right." "Yes," she said immediately. "Yes, I would like that." "Good." He reached out, tucking a wet strand of hair behind her ear. "Very good." Everything changed and nothing changed. Nora still cooked and cleaned and managed the house. Benjamin still ran the ranch. But now there were stolen moments. Hands brushing as they passed in the hallway, lingering looks over dinner, evening walks in the fading light. He courted her with wildflowers picked from the meadow, with stories of his childhood, with his attention and care. The ranch hands noticed, of course. Dutch grinned knowingly but said nothing. The younger cowboys teased Benjamin good-naturedly, which he took with grace. 6 weeks after that kiss in the rain, Benjamin asked Nora to take a ride with him. They saddled horses and rode out to a high point that overlooked the ranch and the valley beyond. The summer sun was warm, the grass golden, the sky impossibly blue. They dismounted and stood side by side, looking at the view. Benjamin took her hand and she laced her fingers through his. "I brought you here because I want to show you what I have built," he said. "This ranch, everything I have worked for. I want you to see it not as my employee, but as the woman I love. Because I do love you, Nora, completely." "I love you too," she said, the words coming easily now. He turned to face her, reaching into his pocket. When his hand emerged, it held a ring. Simple gold, no fancy stones, but beautiful in its simplicity. "I know we have only known each other a few months," Benjamin said, "and I know the circumstances of how we met were unusual, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Nora Owens, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, not just my housekeeper? Will you build a life with me here?" Tears streamed down Nora's face, but she was smiling. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and everything else fell away. They were married 4 weeks later in Calistoga's small church. Mabel attended, crying happy tears and hugging Nora tightly. The ranch hands came, dressed in their best clothes. Benjamin's sister Sarah and her husband traveled from Sacramento. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, their vows spoken with deep sincerity. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Benjamin kissed her tenderly, and Nora felt her heart might burst from happiness. This man who had seen her at her lowest, scrubbing floors with raw hands, had given her everything. The celebration afterward was boisterous and joyful. Mabel had insisted on making the wedding cake. The ranch hands played music, and there was dancing and laughter late into the evening. As the party wound down and guests began to depart, Benjamin pulled Nora aside. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered honestly. "Good. I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way." They returned to the ranch as husband and wife. That night, Nora moved her belongings upstairs to Benjamin's room, which was now their room. She lay in his arms, listening to his heartbeat, and thought about the journey that had brought her here. From desperation and despair to love and hope. From hands raw and bleeding to hands held gently in Benjamin's. Life on the ranch continued, but everything felt richer now. Nora still cooked and managed the house, but now she did it as mistress of the home, not hired help. She worked alongside Benjamin, building their life together. They made decisions together, planned for the future together, faced challenges together. That first winter brought challenges. A hard freeze killed several head of cattle, straining finances. But they worked through it, Nora stretching supplies creatively while Benjamin and the hands worked twice as hard. By spring, they had recovered. The second spring brought a different kind of challenge. Nora discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with both joy and terror. Benjamin was overjoyed, immediately becoming even more protective and attentive. She had to constantly remind him that pregnancy was not an illness, that she could still work. "I just want to take care of you," he said, "the way you take care of everyone else." "You do take care of me," she assured him. "Every day." On a warm September evening in 1879, their son was born. They named him Peter, after Benjamin's father. He came into the world screaming lustily, a healthy baby with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. Benjamin held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "We made this," he whispered in wonder. "You and I made a person." "We did," Nora agreed, exhausted but euphoric. Peter was followed by a daughter 2 years later whom they named Rose. She was quieter than her brother, contemplative even as an infant. Then came another son, James, loud and demanding. The house filled with the sounds of children, laughter, crying, playing, arguing. Nora had never been happier. The years passed in a blur of activity. The ranch prospered. Benjamin expanded operations, buying adjacent land, increasing the herd. Nora managed not just the house but also the ranch accounts, discovering she had a head for numbers. Together, they built something solid and lasting. Peter grew into a serious boy who loved the cattle and the land. Rose was artistic, always drawing and creating. James was the adventurer, constantly getting into trouble. Nora and Benjamin raised them with love and discipline, teaching them the value of hard work and honesty. One evening, when Peter was 7, Rose 5, and James 3, the family sat together on the porch after supper. The children played in the yard, their laughter carrying on the warm air. Benjamin rocked slowly, his hand holding Nora's. "You ever think about that day?" he asked. "When I walked into the saloon, sometimes," Nora admitted. "I think about how my life could have gone so differently if you had not come in that day, if I had not taken the chance, if we had not found each other. I think about it too. I almost did not go to town that day. Almost sent one of the hands to pick up supplies, but something made me go myself." He squeezed her hand. "Fate, maybe, or luck. Grace," Nora suggested. "After everything I lost, I was given something better, given you this life, our children. That feels like grace." "Your hands are soft now," Benjamin observed, lifting her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. "Just as they should be." Nora smiled, remembering. "You were right that first day. These hands did deserve softer work. But more than that, this heart deserved softer life. You gave me that." "We gave each other that," Benjamin corrected. "You brought life back to this place, to me. Before you, I was just going through motions. You made everything meaningful." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play, the sun setting over the land they had built together. Peter was chasing Rose, who was laughing and running. James toddled after them, determined to keep up despite his shorter legs. "You ever regret it?" Benjamin asked suddenly. "Leaving town, coming out here, marrying a cattle rancher?" Nora turned to look at him fully. "Not for 1 second. Not ever. This is exactly where I am supposed to be." He smiled, that warm smile that still made her heart flutter after all these years. "Good, because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." "You do not have to," she promised. "I am not going anywhere." The children's shouts of laughter filled the evening air. Inside the house, lamps glowed warmly. In the barn, horses nickered softly. Across the land, cattle grazed peacefully. Everything was exactly as it should be. Nora thought back to that desperate girl scrubbing saloon floors, hands raw and bleeding, future uncertain. She could hardly recognize herself in that memory. That girl had been so lost, so alone, but she had survived. She had taken a chance. And that chance had led her here to this life, this family, this love. "Thank you," she said softly to Benjamin. "For what? For seeing me. For seeing past the girl scrubbing floors to who I could be. For giving me a chance." "Thank you for taking it," Benjamin replied. "For trusting me. For loving me. For building this life with me. Always," Nora promised. "For always." The years continued to pass, bringing both challenges and joys. Drought one year tested their resilience, but they survived. A particularly harsh winter another year pushed them to their limits, but they endured. Through it all, their love remained constant, the foundation upon which everything else was built. When Peter was 12, he asked his father to teach him to manage cattle. Benjamin spent hours with his son, sharing knowledge accumulated over years. Watching them together, Nora felt profound gratitude. Her son would never know the desperation she had known. He would grow up secure, loved, with opportunities she had never had. Rose discovered a talent for healing, helping Nora tend to sick animals and people alike. By the time she was 10, she was talking about becoming a real doctor. Most people said women could not be doctors, but Benjamin and Nora encouraged her anyway. "If you want to be a doctor, you will be a doctor," Benjamin told her firmly. "Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." James proved to be gifted with horses. At 8 years old, he could gentle the wildest colt, seeming to have an instinctive understanding of what the animals needed. Dutch said the boy was a natural, maybe the best he had ever seen. The ranch continued to grow. By the mid-1880s, The Double P was one of the most successful operations in the region. Benjamin's hard work and Nora's careful management had built something substantial. They employed a dozen ranch hands, owned hundreds of head of cattle, and had expanded the house to accommodate their growing family. But success did not change who they were. Benjamin still rose early to work alongside his men. Nora still cooked, though she now had help from a young woman named Emma who had come seeking work much as Nora once had. Nora made sure Emma was treated well, paid fairly, given respect and opportunity. "You are doing for her what Mabel did for you," Benjamin observed one evening. "And what you did for me," Nora added. "Giving someone a chance when they need it most, that matters." In 1886, Mabel passed away peacefully in her sleep. Nora wept at the funeral, grateful she had been able to visit her friend regularly over the years, to show her the life she had built, to thank her properly for everything. At the graveside, she placed wildflowers and whispered a final thank you. That same year brought happier news. Sarah and Thomas had their third child, a daughter. The families visited frequently, children growing up as close as siblings. Sarah and Nora became genuine friends, bonding over the challenges and joys of raising families in the still wild California. Peter turned 16 in 1888, a young man now rather than a boy. He was tall and strong, serious and responsible. He talked about taking over the ranch someday, and Benjamin glowed with pride at his son's interest. "He is a better man at 16 than I was at 20, Benjamin told Nora. "You raised him well." "We raised him," she corrected. "Together." Rose, at 14, was determined to pursue medicine despite societal expectations. She spent hours reading medical books Benjamin ordered from San Francisco. Her dedication impressed everyone. James, at 12, was already breaking horses for the ranch, his natural talent having developed into genuine skill. Cowboys twice his age asked his advice. Watching her children grow into capable, compassionate people filled Nora with pride and satisfaction. They were her greatest accomplishment, more valuable than any success the ranch achieved. One spring morning in 1889, Nora woke to find Benjamin watching her in the early light. "What is it?" she asked sleepily. "Just thinking," he said. "It has been 11 years since we married. Almost 12 since the day you walked into that saloon. Best decision I ever made going there that day." He reached out, running his fingers gently over her hand. "Look, still soft," she laughed. "You still think about that, sometimes. I remember how they looked that day, red and raw. I remember thinking you deserved better. I am glad I could give you better. You gave me everything," Nora said seriously, "everything that matters. And you gave me the same." He leaned in, kissing her softly. Even after all these years, his kiss still made her heart race. "I love you, Nora Parker. I love you too." That summer, Peter met a girl at church, the daughter of a farmer from the next county. Her name was Catherine, and she was sweet and kind. Peter was smitten, stumbling over his words whenever she was near. Nora watched her son fall in love and felt the bittersweet awareness that her children were growing up, would eventually leave. "He is too young," Benjamin protested when Peter asked permission to court Catherine. "He is 16, same age we were when we started working," Nora pointed out. "Not so young. That is different." How? Benjamin sputtered but could not come up with a good answer. Eventually, he gave permission, though he made it clear the courtship would be properly supervised. The years kept rolling forward as they always do. Peter married Catherine when he was 19, in a ceremony that reminded Nora of her own wedding. The young couple built a house on the far side of the ranch property, and Peter took on more responsibility for operations. Rose left for San Francisco in 1892, at 17, to study medicine at a progressive women's college. Benjamin worried constantly, but Nora reminded him that they had raised their daughter to be strong and capable. James, at 15, was already being courted by other ranches who wanted to hire him for his skill with horses, but he had no interest in leaving the Double P. "This is home," he said simply. "Why would I go anywhere else?" In 1893, Peter and Catherine had a daughter, making Benjamin and Nora grandparents. They named her Nora after her grandmother. Holding her tiny namesake, Nora was overwhelmed with emotion. "Look at this," she whispered to Benjamin. "We have a grandchild." "How did we get old enough for grandchildren? We are not old," Benjamin protested, though gray threaded through his hair now and lines creased his face. "We are not young either," Nora laughed, "but I would not change a thing." More grandchildren followed. Peter and Catherine had 2 sons after their daughter. Rose, after completing her medical training, returned to California and opened a practice in Sacramento, serving patients regardless of their ability to pay. She married a fellow doctor, a kind man named Richard, and they had twin daughters. James married at 20, a ranch girl named Lucy who could ride as well as he could. They built a life together on the Double P, raising horses and cattle both. Benjamin and Nora watched their family grow and expand, watched their children become parents themselves, watched the ranch pass to the next generation. The house filled with grandchildren on holidays, ringing with laughter and chaos. In 1898, Benjamin and Nora celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. Their children threw them a party, inviting everyone they had ever known. The celebration was enormous, filling the ranch with people, food, music, joy. That night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Benjamin and Nora sat on the porch as they had so many times before. They were in their mid-40s now, no longer young but not yet old. They had lived a full life together, built something meaningful. 20 years, Benjamin mused. "Feels like both forever and no time at all." "I know what you mean," Nora said. She looked down at her hands, which bore the marks of age now but were still soft, still cared for. "Do you remember what you said that first day? In the saloon?" "Those hands deserve softer work," Benjamin quoted. "How could I forget? It was the beginning of everything. You changed my life with those words, with that offer. I was so lost, so desperate, and you gave me hope." "You gave me hope too," Benjamin said. "This house was empty before you came. I was going through the motions of living without really living. You brought life back. You brought meaning." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, watching the stars. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. From the barn, horses responded with soft whinnies. The land breathed around them, alive and thriving. "If you could go back," Benjamin asked, "to that day in the saloon, knowing everything that would happen, would you make the same choice?" Nora did not hesitate. "Without question. Every joy, every challenge, every moment has been worth it." "You are worth it. This life is worth it. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, they made the good parts sweeter." She squeezed his hand. "I would choose you again and again in every lifetime." "I would choose you too," Benjamin said softly. "Every time, always." The years continued their inexorable march. The new century arrived, bringing changes both exciting and challenging. Automobiles started appearing, though Benjamin insisted horses were more reliable. Electricity came to Calistoga, though the ranch remained too remote for such modern conveniences. The world was changing, becoming something new and different, but some things remained constant. The land endured. The cattle grazed. The family gathered. Love persisted. Peter proved to be an excellent manager, expanding operations with care and intelligence. Rose's medical practice thrived, and she became known throughout the region for her skill and compassion. James developed a reputation as the best horse trainer in California, people coming from hundreds of miles to have him work with their animals. Benjamin and Nora gradually stepped back from daily operations, content to let their children lead while they enjoyed a slower pace. They took long walks together, talked for hours, remembered their journey. In 1905, they celebrated their 27th anniversary quietly, just the two of them. Benjamin gave her a locket containing photographs of their children and grandchildren. Nora gave him a journal where she had written their story, from that first day in the saloon through all the years that followed. "So we never forget," she said. "So someday our grandchildren can know how it began." Benjamin read through it, tears streaming down his face. "You remembered everything. How could I forget any of it? Every moment with you has been precious." In 1907, Benjamin became ill. A persistent cough that would not go away, fatigue that grew worse. The doctor diagnosed consumption, said there was nothing to be done. Benjamin faced the news with the same quiet courage he had faced everything in life. "I am not afraid," he told Nora. "I have lived a good life. I have you, our children, our grandchildren. I have no regrets." "I am afraid," Nora admitted. "I do not know how to be without you. You are strong. You always have been. You will be fine." "I do not want to be fine. I want you." He pulled her close, and she cried against his chest, feeling the too rapid beat of his heart. "You will always have me. Death cannot change what we have built together." The illness progressed slowly but inevitably. Benjamin grew weaker, spending more time in bed, but his mind remained sharp. Their children visited constantly, along with grandchildren. The house filled with family, everyone wanting to spend time with him while they could. One evening, when the house was quiet and they were alone, Benjamin asked Nora to lie down beside him. She did, curling into his side as she had thousands of times before. "Tell me about that day," he said. "In the saloon. You remember? I want to hear you tell it." So Nora told the story of scrubbing floors, of raw, bleeding hands, of a stranger who walked in and offered hope. She told of her fear, her decision to trust, the journey to the ranch. She told of falling in love, of building a life, of everything they had created together. "Best decision I ever made," Benjamin said when she finished. "Going to that saloon, finding you. Best decision I ever made was trusting you. We saved each other, I think." "We did," Nora agreed. "We absolutely did." Benjamin died peacefully 3 days later, surrounded by family, Nora holding his hand. His last words were, "I love you," and she whispered the same back to him. The grief was profound and consuming. Nora felt as if part of herself had been torn away. For days, she could barely function, moving through the motions of living without really being present. Her children worried, hovering around her with concern, but gradually, slowly, she found her way back. She remembered Benjamin's words, "You are strong. You always have been." She remembered the girl she had been, desperate and alone, who had survived and thrived. That strength was still within her. She continued living at the ranch, surrounded by family. Peter ran operations now, doing his father proud. Rose visited frequently, checking on her mother's health. James made sure she was never alone for long. The grandchildren provided distraction and joy, their energy and innocence a balm to her grief. Nora took to walking the property, remembering. Here was where Benjamin had proposed. There was where they had built the addition to the house when the children were small. Over there was the tree where they used to sit on summer evenings, talking and dreaming. She found comfort in the land, in the continuity of it. Benjamin was gone, but what they had built remained. Their children, their grandchildren, the ranch itself, all of it stood as testament to their love. One afternoon, about a year after Benjamin's death, Nora walked to the high point where he had proposed. She stood looking out over the valley, the land golden in the afternoon sun, and felt a sense of peace settle over her. "We did well," she said aloud, as if Benjamin could hear her. "Look at what we built. Look at what our love created. It endures. You endure in every fence post, every blade of grass, every smile on our grandchildren's faces. You are still here." The wind rustled through the grass, and for a moment she could almost feel his presence beside her. She closed her eyes, remembering his smile, his laugh, his gentle hands, his unwavering love. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me. Thank you for everything." Nora lived another 15 years, watching her grandchildren grow, meeting great-grandchildren, seeing the ranch continue to thrive. She told stories of Benjamin, making sure the younger generations knew the man he had been. She shared the journal she had written, the story of how a desperate girl scrubbing floors had found hope and love. She never remarried. When asked why, she simply said, "I had my great love. Some people never find that. I was lucky enough to have it for 27 years. That is enough for a lifetime." When Nora finally passed in 1922, at the age of 66, she was surrounded by 3 generations of family. Her last words were, "Tell Benjamin I am coming home." They buried her beside him, on a hillside overlooking the Double P. The headstones were simple. Benjamin Parker, 1852–1907, beloved husband, father, grandfather. Nora Parker, 1856–1922, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. Below both names a single line, "Together always." The ranch continued, passed down through generations. Peter's children took it over, then their children after them. The original house still stood, carefully maintained, with a plaque in the kitchen explaining its history. The story of Benjamin and Nora became family legend, told and retold, the tale of how love found 2 people who needed it most. In the kitchen, hanging in a place of honor, was a simple frame containing a piece of paper. On it, in Nora's handwriting, were the words Benjamin had spoken that first day. "Those hands deserve softer work." Below it, she had added, "And he gave them everything they deserved and more. He gave me love." Visitors to the ranch often asked about the frame, and the family would tell the story. How a rancher walked into a saloon and saw a girl scrubbing floors. How a simple act of kindness changed 2 lives. How love can find us in the most unexpected places, when we need it most. The story endured because it was true. Not just factually true, though it was that, but true in a deeper sense. True to the power of seeing someone when they feel invisible. True to the courage it takes to trust. True to the transformative nature of love. True to the idea that we can build something lasting, something meaningful from the smallest beginnings. And in the end, that was Benjamin and Nora's greatest legacy. Not the ranch, successful though it was. Not the cattle or horses or land. Their greatest legacy was the love they had shared, the family they had created, the proof that kindness matters, that hope exists, that healing is possible. Those hands had deserved softer work, and Benjamin had given them that. But more importantly, he had seen the person those hands belonged to. He had recognized her worth when she could not see it herself. He had offered not just a job, but a future. And she had been brave enough to take it. From such small beginnings, great things grow. From a simple offer of work comes a lifetime of love. From raw, bleeding hands comes a family, a legacy, a story that endures. Their great-great-grandchildren still work the land, still tell the story, still honor the love that started it all. The Double P Ranch remains in family hands, a living testament to what Benjamin and Nora built together. And if you visit, if you stand in that kitchen where Nora once prepared countless meals, if you read those words in the frame, you can almost feel it. The love that filled this place, the hope that transformed 2 lives, the enduring power of kindness and courage and trust. Those hands deserved softer work. And in giving them that, Benjamin Parker gave Nora Owens everything, and she gave him the same in return. Together, they built a love story for the ages, started with a simple offer and continued through every challenge and joy life brought their way. That is the story of the girl scrubbing floors and the rancher who saw her. That is the story of the Double P Ranch. That is the story of a love that transcended time, that created generations, that proved that sometimes, in the most desperate moments, hope walks through the door and changes everything. And that story, true and enduring, is worth telling again and again, for as long as people believe in the power of love to transform, to heal, to create something beautiful and lasting from the simplest beginnings. Benjamin and Nora proved it possible. Their love proved it real. And that truth echoes through time, inspiring all who hear it to believe that they too might find such love, such hope, such transformation. All it takes is courage to offer help and bravery to accept it. All it takes is seeing someone truly and being willing to be seen. All it takes is love in its simplest and most profound form. That is what Benjamin and Nora found. That is what they built. That is what they left behind for generations to come, and that is why their story endures.